I need to be able to roam when I talk. Just going to try not to fall off the stage. That's really my primary objective while giving this presentation. I've had the opportunity to work in both the municipal environment as well as in the consulting industry, and I really believe that in the presentation that we saw this morning, it really is the responsibility of the engineering community to come back and look at the way in which we do things and the way in which we develop roadway networks within cities and what priority we give them. And so part of the presentation that I'm doing today is on the sustainable roadway design and multimodal roads. And really what it is it's my perspective from being a former city engineer, looking at how we did work within a city, as well as looking at what consultants provided us, and then as a consultant, what we can provide to municipalities and agencies as they're looking at these things. And really one of the primary changes that I saw during my time at the city was the development of the LEED certification for buildings. And part of that, the LEED certification drove a change within the way in which we built buildings, the way we looked at buildings, the way we looked at that infrastructure as a public entity. And it drove the way the contractors, the way the consultants, everybody that worked with us, how they pursued those sorts of things. And it really allowed us to generate use of public dollars that everybody could understand. There was a buy-in using the LEED process. And really, part of what we see happening now is, since about 2012, there has been a development of what they call the Envision process. And really, it is for those public rights-of-way. And it allows us to maybe have that same synergy that we had regarding LEED buildings come around the concept of developing the roadway networks and the way in which we build them in our cities. Really, the U.S. Highway Administration has stepped up and changed the way in which they're looking at the infrastructure. We talk about the DOT approach to roadways. Even here in the state, ADOT has incorporated a multimodal component to their roadway design, and it's being driven by the fact that we are looking at other elements when we're doing the roadway design that are above and beyond just those standard things of making a road wide and safe and fast. And really, it is an opportunity to incorporate some of those multimodal components that haven't necessarily been considered as you're going through and looking at developing the roadway network. And really, what does a sustainable roadway look like? It really doesn't look significantly different than the roads we build today. It just has added features. And when we look at that, we look at how we are doing pedestrian and bicycle access. It's looking at incorporating the natural environment into what we're doing, incorporating art into what we do, as well as coming up with context-sensitive systems and designs that allow us to develop a set of infrastructure that takes into consideration all the elements that are associated with constructing new infrastructure. And really, part of this is to bring back in the native vegetation, deal with some of the drainage issues, and use those to the benefit of what infrastructure we're building. I'm really enamored with the complete streets concept. I personally am a cyclist. I ride every day to work. It makes the people that I work with think I'm crazy, because at 115 degrees it is pretty hot. But it is still doable. My ride is about 8 miles, and I try and stay off what I would consider to be the major arterial network, for the simple reason that in Phoenix, the speed limit on the network that I would have to ride on is 45 miles an hour, and there's a section of it that has no bike lanes. Now, the issue is that I'm the type of cyclist that will ride on a 45-mile-an-hour road with no bike lanes so that I can get to work. But not everybody else can accommodate that type of infrastructure. And Complete Streets really takes that focus back to what's the purpose of the entire roadway. It's not about necessarily getting cars there, getting people there the fastest way, but it's in an opportunity to accommodate everybody that needs to use the physical roadway right of way. As a city engineer, I was absolutely responsible for what went on in the public right of way. And part of the opportunity to look at that was that we had a significant number of standards and things that we made the development community do, as well as the things that we did as a city when we built roadways. And I can assure you that in even residential neighborhoods, we had developers coming in and asking if they could remove the sidewalk on one side or do something that would eliminate some of the costs associated with their construction. And that really was contrary to these concepts of being able to manage people, manage their opportunities to use other modes of travel in even the local neighborhoods. So you can imagine what happens when you get out to the residential or off the residential streets and to the arterial streets. So really what we're looking for is a way in which to develop networks and with standards that engineers can go and look at that give them the opportunity to see a way to which to design a road that's different than the AASHTO Green Book, the way in which kind of everybody has looked at that infrastructure, the big wide radiuses, things that let you go fast when you turned around a corner and eliminated the opportunities for pedestrians to clear an intersection relatively safely. And that's really what the Complete Streets concept does, is brings the scale of what you're doing back down to something that is more manageable. I'm going to talk about two different things. I've got this concept of the Complete Streets and what we did. This is just a sample from Green Building in terms of what a complete street looks like. We had a street in Chandler where I was the city engineer, and we were trying to take the scale of the street down from a 6-lane arterial to a infrastructure that would be going through the downtown. So the standard speed on the roadway when we started the project was in excess of 45 miles an hour. So that was what the traffic was that was going through downtown. And we were trying to pre-position a bunch of infrastructure to allow future development, redevelopment in the downtown, to be able to improve the walking environment. We had a pedestrian crossing that we called the chicken crossing because it was you were playing chicken with traffic to try and get across the road because they were coming at you at 45 miles an hour. We took most of the travel lanes down in both width, as well as we eliminated a lot of the opportunities for separate right turn lanes, separate left turn lanes, and made people stay within the traffic, in the traffic stream. And really how that helped, which is similar to what we did, what's shown up here, is that you brought a scale of where we put bicycles back on the roads, we put parking back on the road, we improved the walking environment by taking what was a zero lot line downtown where buildings were built right to the edge of the property lines, and you had possibly maybe 5 feet of sidewalk by them, and extended that sidewalk out to anywhere from 12 to 15 feet. We also then were in a position that we could allow the use of the public right-of-way through a permitting system by the adjacent businesses to use some of that public right-of-way to develop patios and outdoor dining and those sorts of things that drive that level of sense of community up dramatically. So when we started all of this in Chandler, we didn't really have a guideline to be able to do this with. We had a lot of these standards were coming into play at the time. It was in about 2008, 2009 that we started this type of a project. So when we were looking for guidance or guidelines that could allow us to make the types of changes that we were looking at, we were running up against every group who had a technical stake in what was going on the project, wanting their stuff to be the most important. And it always, it typically always deals with who has the money when you start these projects. So it's the streets guys, and they have the money. So the park guys don't get their trees because the street guys are too busy paving and making things the way they want it to look like. It was a really big effort, and we were really taken through the mayor at the time and our downtown redevelopment manager, who were the cheerleaders for making a change, to not build the same thing that we have always built when we were building roadways. And so it was a very interesting approach to getting people to see that there were a different way of doing things and that it wasn't wrong, and the fact that we weren't accommodating traffic at 45 miles an hour through the downtown was not a bad thing, and that we could put pedestrians back out onto the system. We could put people on bikes out into the system. In downtown, we actually had a storm drain system, so we didn't need to do a lot of the other things that are shown in the concept of dealing with some of the sustainability stuff. We had huge stakeholder involvement. The downtown was very intimate in making sure that we did the project in a manner that was going to support them. Like most things, the cooler time of the year is when the downtown had a lot of things planned, and we needed to stage the construction around that time frame. So stakeholder involvement, the way in which we used the CM at risk process to be able to allow us to deliver the project in phases that a contractor wouldn't normally have approached the project if it was a hard bid project. When we talk about the rating and sustainability systems, there's a bunch of new tools out there that are being used in a variety of states. And I've set this presentation up so that you'll see things from north of the border. The project I'm going to show you is the example project is from Canada. I am originally Canadian and have been working down here in the US for almost 15 years. So I've learned to make my projects and projects the right way and process the right way. So I don't get caught up too badly, except now I can't remember which one I'm supposed to use where. So when we talk about the sustainability and rating tools, there are a number of these types of opportunities out here for the technical design side. But really what it's missing is that ability to take in the next level of community stakeholders, the environmental components, and making sure that those are dealt with as you're looking at the overall construction. And really Envision came about as a group effort and brought together both the concept of sustainability as well as life cycle, and a number of other elements in which you can rank a project and get a level associated with the way in which your project's done, much like the LEED rating system. And that ability to have a mechanism that looks at things above and beyond the roadway design components was an opportunity to really drive a different approach and really brought together a number of the technical agencies, so the Institute of Sustainable Infrastructure, as well as a number of the engineering areas, including the ACEC, which is the American Council of Consulting Engineers. And this really did bring an opportunity to bring together a more really holistic approach to how you look at the infrastructure and what you're building, what the community priorities are. I think if you look at Arizona Avenue and you tried to build it today, the community isn't in the same place it was. We always said we threaded the needle. We managed to be in a situation where we had funding and political will and design that was effective and made what people were looking for at the time. And it is currently now still driving a significant amount of economic development, with a number of development agreements having still come through the city to use that infrastructure that we put together. This cycle, in terms of the Envision Framework, it really gives you the ability to identify where you're going to focus on getting your credits for the project. It really is a way in looking at your community, your leadership, your use of materials, the environment, and then really what the community is looking for. There is a website for Envision, so if you'd like to go to that, but this just gives you kind of a basic overview of, it looks at really the full project life cycle. It's not just looking at what we're trying to build today. It looks at some of those long-term maintenance issues, material choices that impact that. And then it also, by incorporating the stakeholder input, brings together a whole group of people that sometimes, if you looked at a standard project, unless you're working in a smaller city in which your engineering department kind of does all the engineering for everybody, then you have that opportunity to do that a little more easily. But as cities get larger and you get into individual departments, everybody has their own specific need, and it really depends on who brings the money to the table. The interesting thing that makes it significantly different from the LEED part is that really the infrastructure that we're talking about has a variety of different stakeholders, both private and public, typically when you're working in the right of way, and you're looking at agencies, utility companies, everybody that may not have a shared vision for what you're trying to do. And there is a lot of taxpayer funding that is predominant in this approach. So this is really a way of achieving an opportunity to get optimal performance out of the overall infrastructure. There are, like I said, other standards, and we're not superseding those. We're really taking those and incorporating them and adding these other elements to the entire process. And I'm going to show you a practical example. Once again, this is north of the border, but it also takes you from the concept of, we're not just talking about roads when we talk about infrastructure and transportation. So it's a multimodal approach. And here what we were looking at is we had our Stantec team was looking at an area that we had the city wanting to incorporate more bicycle activity, which if you looked at this, you can't quite figure out where you'd put a bicycle. They wanted to incorporate a lot of residential neighborhoods are in this same area, and they wanted to be able to protect some very environmentally sensitive bald eagles. So when you looked at what they were trying to do here is they had such a significant increase in the amount of rail traffic that needed to be able to get to the port. They needed to remove some of the at-grade crossings for the roadway. And they wanted to be able to do this in what was a very confined area. So they did a ton of public outreach. They had private residential that was right next door. They wanted to deal with the bald eagles that were already nesting on the site. They had an opportunity to link a whole bunch of other infrastructure together that would never have been able to be linked previously because of the railroad itself. And so this was what they were looking at. And then just to, add complexity to everything, they added earthquakes. So, if you're wondering what you have to design for, then you have the potential of the geotechnical aspects of a project. What we were able to do, we were able to get rid of those at-grade crossings. We were able to mitigate a lot of the environmental issues, and we were able to take a lot of the invasive species off of the project site and get back to native plants for the area. And there was a good opportunity to incorporate art into the project as well, so make it an aesthetic place that you wanted to be at. When you looked at that previous picture, it wasn't that aesthetically pleasing. So really what happened was there was noise walls added. The park itself then was linked back to the roadway network, and there was a lot of public art incorporated. Some unique transportation options, which incorporated a diverging diamond intersection. So as a project in its totality, it brought a lot of the elements together to show what can be done when you're dealing with very complicated multi-stakeholder type projects. The project is undergoing Envision certification right now. We're looking at a platinum process, platinum ranking, which is based on the 50 points out of the total 55. And it's really, for Stantec, our first transportation project that went through this certification. We have done some other ones associated with pipeline facilities. And it will be a case study for Stantec in terms of sustainable design. So I've given you kind of an overview of what Envision can do. It is an opportunity to engage your public officials. It gives them an opportunity to see a holistic approach where you bring multiple groups of stakeholders together and address the overall concerns for a project and give you the opportunity to see what that looks like in terms of a delivered project, a constructed project that will bring you the opportunity to deal with that multimodal integration. So that's my presentation.